It was the middle of November when I moved into the old cottage on the edge of town. The kind of place that felt like it had a heartbeat of its own. I wanted solitude, a break from city noise and people. And this place, surrounded by quiet woods and distant neighbors, seemed perfect. The rent was cheap, almost too cheap, but I didn't question it. Maybe I should have. The first few days were calm, almost peaceful. I unpacked, set up my work desk near the window, and made a habit of drinking tea at exactly 10 p.m., just before heading to bed. I could hear owls sometimes, and once or twice the rustling of deer in the woods behind the cottage. Nothing alarming, nothing I hadn't expected. It started with small things. The first incident was the back door. I clearly remember locking it before going to sleep, but the next morning it was slightly ajar. I told myself I'd probably forgotten, even though I could swear I heard the click of the lock the night before. Still, I shrugged it off. New place, old doors. Maybe the latch was loose. Then came the footsteps. Light, soft, like someone walking barefoot on wooden floors. I lived alone. No pets. My closest neighbor was half a mile away. I heard it for the first time around 2 a.m. The sound of careful steps just outside my bedroom. I froze in bed, my breath shallow. The sound continued for 5 steps, then nothing. No door opened, no creak, no slam. Just silence. I didn't get up. I couldn't. I stayed under my blanket, waiting for something to happen. But nothing ever did. The next morning, I searched the entire cottage. Every room, closet, even the attic, though I hated how the ladder creaked beneath me. I found nothing. Not a footprint, not a moved item. I told myself, it must have been the old house settling, wood shifting with the cold. But in the back of my mind, a different thought scratched at me. What if it wasn't? By the 5th night, my comfort had turned into a quiet anxiety. I started locking all windows, double-checking the doors, even setting up small objects in the hallway, like a cup on the floor or a pen balanced on a table edge, so I'd know if someone moved through. In the morning, they'd always be exactly where I left them. Except one night, I placed a small porcelain bell on the kitchen counter right near the edge where even a draft might knock it over. I figured if anything moved through the house, I'd hear the bell fall. At around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No sound, nothing obvious. But I knew something had pulled me from sleep, a kind of stillness that wasn't natural. I waited, ears straining. Then I heard it. Not the bell, not footsteps, but something softer, breathing, slow, controlled, not mine. I stayed in bed until sunrise. When I finally dared to walk into the kitchen, the bell was gone. Not broken, not on the floor. Gone? I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where it should have been. My hands trembled slightly. I checked every surface, the floor, even the trash bin. Nothing. That bell didn't just fall. Someone, something, had taken it. That's when I began to realize this wasn't just an old house with quirks. I wasn't alone here, and whoever was sharing this place with me, they were careful. They wanted me to know, but not too much. Just enough to keep me wondering, watching, listening. The day after the bell disappeared, I couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind kept replaying the night, the soft breathing, the silence that followed. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe the bell had rolled off the counter and into some crack I hadn't noticed. Maybe I had sleepwalked, but the hollow feeling in my chest told me I didn't believe any of that. That night I left the lights on in the hallway, just a soft glow to make the darkness less complete. I stayed up in bed, eyes fixed on the crack under the door, hoping, or dreading, to see a shadow pass by. At some point around 1:30 a.m., I must have dozed off, but I was jolted awake by the sound of water running, the bathroom faucet. I sat up, heart thudding. I live alone. I always double-check the taps before bed. I listened for movement. The water kept running, steady and unhurried, as if someone was calmly washing their hands. I reached for my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I turned on my flashlight and stepped out of the room, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. The bathroom door was halfway open, and yes, the faucet was on, the sink nearly full. I shut it off and just stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked pale, thinner. There were shadows under my eyes. I looked like I hadn't slept in days. Maybe I hadn't. I walked through the house again. Everything looked untouched. But that was the most disturbing part. It was too untouched. No dust disturbed, no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Whoever was doing this, they were good at hiding. The next morning, I installed a simple, motion-triggered camera in the hallway. Nothing fancy, just a small device connected to my phone. That night, I placed another bell, this time on a small tray in front of the attic hatch. I barely slept. I kept staring at the camera feed on my phone, but nothing moved. No alerts, nothing triggered. But in the morning, the bell was upside down. Not broken, just flipped. I checked the footage. Nothing. Not a single frame showed any movement. It was like time itself had skipped, like something had moved between seconds. I tried to brush it off, but deep down, I felt it. I was being watched, toyed with. Later that evening, I invited over an old friend, Lila. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was feeling a bit unsettled, that weird things were happening. She laughed it off, as expected, but agreed to stay the night. Having someone else there made me feel a little more grounded. We had wine, played cards, talked late into the night. For the first time in days, I felt somewhat normal. Around 2 a.m., I went to the bathroom. When I came out, I found Lila, standing in the hallway, staring at the guest bedroom door. "It was open," she whispered. "Just now, when I walked past. It slowly closed on its own." I looked at the door. It was shut now, firmly. I walked over, opened it slowly. Nothing inside. The room was cold, though, much colder than the rest of the house. I could feel the chill biting at my skin. We both went to bed without saying much more. The next morning, Lila left early, giving a half-hearted excuse about an early appointment. She didn't make eye contact. That day, I did something I had been avoiding since the first night. I climbed up into the attic again. This time, I took my phone and a flashlight and checked every inch of the space. It was dusty, cramped, and mostly empty, except for the far corner. There, hidden behind old insulation boards, was a small pile of things. My things. A spoon from the kitchen, one of my socks, a photo I'd kept in a drawer, and the bell. I stood there, frozen. A terrible realization blooming in my chest. Someone had been living here. Not a ghost, not a demon. A person, a flesh and blood intruder. Somehow, they had been hiding in my attic, slipping in and out silently, moving through my home when I slept, when I left the room, when I wasn't looking. I stumbled back down the ladder, locked the hatch, and leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. I was shaking. I called the police. I told them someone had broken in, that they had been living above me. They searched the house, the attic, but the space was empty by then. Whoever had been there was gone. No fingerprints, no footprints, just the pile of my belongings. They told me to stay with someone for a few days. I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't. I couldn't leave, not without understanding what was really going on. That night I nailed the attic hatch shut. I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway, back against the wall, flashlight in hand. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard it. Not footsteps, not breathing, but scratching from inside the walls. The scratching continued for hours. It would stop for a few minutes, then start again. Light, deliberate, like someone tracing their fingers along the inside of the drywall. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was locked in a state of frozen terror. Every instinct in me screaming that whatever was behind those walls wasn't finished yet. By dawn, the sounds finally ceased. The silence that followed was even worse. It felt calculated, like whoever, or whatever, had been scratching, wanted me to know they were still there, just waiting. I remember staring at the wall across from me for a long time, wondering how many nights I had slept, unaware of someone crawling just inches away, hidden inside the very bones of the house. That morning, I made a decision. I called in a local contractor and lied, said I wanted to renovate the insulation. He agreed to start that afternoon. I didn't tell him about the noises or the attic. I just watched him, silently, as he worked his way along the walls, cutting carefully through decades-old sheetrock. I sat in the kitchen while he opened up the section closest to where I had heard the scratching. And then he called out, "There's something here. You might want to take a look." I walked in, heart pounding. He had peeled back a large section of the wall, and inside, curled in the cramped, shadowy cavity, was a makeshift bedding area, torn blankets, empty food wrappers, bits of rope, and beside them, a notebook. The contractor looked disturbed. "You said no one else lived here." I nodded slowly. He left shortly after that. I didn't blame him. I sat on the floor and opened the notebook. The handwriting was messy, erratic, pages filled with strange ramblings. She watches me now. She hears me. I like when she talks to herself. She sleeps deeply. I move then, and then one page, written in red ink. "Soon I'll come out and say hello." I don't remember how long I sat there. The sun had moved across the sky when I finally got up. I packed a single bag and walked out of the house, locking the door behind me, even though I knew it was useless. I went straight to the police again, this time with the notebook. They took it seriously. A full investigation followed. They found traces of human presence, DNA, hair, more hidden compartments. But whoever had lived there was long gone. The theory was that he'd been living in the attic and walls for months, possibly longer, entering the house through a hidden crawl space near the foundation. They never caught him. For weeks after, I stayed with friends, trying to sleep without imagining someone just inches away, watching me through cracks in the wall. I sold the house at a loss, no questions asked. I didn't care. But the worst part? It wasn't over. Even now, in my new apartment across town, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with the same feeling, that prickling sense that I'm being watched. A few times, I've heard soft scratching. Once, I found a spoon from my old cottage in my kitchen drawer. I never brought anything from that house here. I don't tell people this part, because if I admit it, if I say it out loud, it means he's still out there. And maybe, just maybe, he never really left.